Hi, my name is Aaron Garcia. Welcome to episode 1 of Conversations with Aaron, show where I interview local artists and highlight their work. Today's guest will be Brittney Kristina.
Hello.
Alright, that works.
Okay. Hello.
Growing up, you enjoyed reading, I assume? And
Not really.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, no, really?
I had a very low reading level. I also did really terrible in English growing up, like C's and D's on my essays.
Oh, my.
I
okay.
know. I almost failed like multiple English classes because I have this theory that, well, first off, I would get a little stubborn and like, no, my way is the right way, right? But also, like, I think especially with creative writers and creators, we think differently than other people. We're not like other people. We're creative.
Man, freaking American school system.
I have been writing like long before I can remember. It's always just been a hobby of mine. Like my mom used to tell me that, like when I was like 2 years old, I was writing like little stories and like showing her like a rabbit going to the grocery store. I have no idea. Fun fact, I actually didn't read a full book until I was in 6th grade, but I wrote my first book in 4th grade. So I was writing before I was even like really knew how to read. I had a really low reading level. But anyways, yeah, the first book I ever wrote, I was 9. It was like 60 pages of a journal, and it was called Snowcats. And I just remember like at recess, like in elementary school, I was just writing like, there's like this like one trash can, which sounds really depressing, but it was like behind this trash can, like away from everyone, just writing. And like at the kitchen table, I would just, after school, I just write. And I just wrote ever since. I have this like giant bin in the top of my closet at home, just full of like binders of books I had written all throughout middle school and early high school. And yeah, so Forsaken, which is this one right here. This is the first one. I don't know if I should like show it. This is that one. This is the first one I ever published.
I didn't know that self-publishing was a thing at all until my mom won a free book coaching session with this one girl named Rocky. And my mom's like, I need this, I don't write, and my daughter writes. Yeah. So she passed along the session to me, and this book coach like met with me and was like, oh, like you can either go the traditionally published route or you can go self-publishing, which I would recommend at your age. Not that like
you'd recommend self-publishing?
Yeah, okay. Since I was only 15 at that time, and she was like, I would recommend this, like for now. And I was like, wait, you can like just publish your book like right now? And so she led me to a graphic designer, an editor, and yeah, so I published it at 16.
Nice. So what are like, because I don't know, me just being like an ignorant buffoon or whatever, I'm just like automatic, like, you know, publishing money, like that's sort of where my mind goes. So how does that work? Like,
normally traditional publishers go 50-50. They make 50% of the profit and you make 50% of the profit.
Okay.
And some are different because some you have to pay to get published with them, which I have heard from so many people to not do that. If someone is making you pay to publish their book with them, then like that's a scam.
Oof, okay. I need to talk to my friend then. Yeah, you have to pay a lot of, or he's gonna pay a lot of money to.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Right,
okay. I mean, I don't know. That's just what I've heard because it's like it normally means that like not that they don't trust that you're gonna make money, but it's like a blanket for them, and it's like if they've already made the money, why do they care about marketing your book?
Yeah.
Like traditional publishing is definitely something I want to do, but it definitely is like they take a big chunk of profits.
Quick little, how do you define like traditional publishing? Like your definition, like traditional publishing, like what exactly does that mean? In other words, pretend like you're just talking to me like regularly, you know, you have to explain things to me like I'm like a baby. Like, Aaron, publish that?
So traditional publishing, you query write letters, a lot of letters to a bunch of agents. And then one of those agents will hopefully be like, yes. And like in the query letters, like sometimes you will send like a chapter of like your book or like your full book, and you're just like, hey, I want to be published. And an agent will ideally pick you up, and then their job is to match you with a publishing house. And yeah, so they publish the book for you. Yeah, they normally do like a 50-50 thing with royalties. But if you get with the publisher, they will like market your book on blast. It'll be like everywhere.
Yeah, they'll take care of you, presumably, right?
Yeah, self-publishing is not quite that way. The problem is it's kind of a monopoly, like most things.
Yeah.
And Amazon's the only company that publishes books, self-publishes, because they bought out a few of the other companies. There are a few that you can publish with, but Amazon takes, I think it's like 60%.
Golly.
So if you buy, so my books are all, I believe 50 Days is like $14. Forsaken is $12. Hummingbird Tales is also $14, I think, just off the top of my head, on Amazon. And I make about...
Price will appear right here
Yes,
when you say it. It's
yes.
like, boom,
I make
boom, boom.
about between $3 and $4 profit each one that's bought.
Okay.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
I make much more profit if you buy directly from me because I can like order my own copies. But
Yeah.
no, but I will say it's funny. I get a lot of questions like immediately, how much money did you make? And I'm like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You are not going to make that much money unless you spend a lot on marketing, really put yourself out there. Like I know so many people that have sold over 1,000 copies of their book within months.
Goodness
That
gracious.
doesn't happen to me because it's just a lot, and I'm in college, and marketing a book is like probably one of the hardest things to do, I think. So that's the one thing with self-publishing, you have to learn how to market. And I don't like marketing, so I don't. So
No,
like,
no, I feel you
I
on
don't
that,
do it
dude.
very-
Like, again, you know, as you know, I'm a filmmaker or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, as evident by this, but I can do everything, but then when it comes to actually like advertising, even the show Conversations with Aaron, I feel like just making, you know, an Instagram post, I'm like, ugh,
No,
publish, ugh.
I know.
Oh, like,
I haven't
it's,
posted about my books on Instagram in a while. I'm like, I need to just like make a post, like, hey, reminder, I have books out. But I just
yeah, like I always, you know, like the idea of having an agent or just like a publicist, I was like, why would you need that? But then like now that I'm like trying, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like I totally get why you need.
I'm working on my 4th book now, and I'm hoping that I get a publisher with that. That's the
Nice.
goal. That's the dream. So
You have a working title for that 4th book?
yeah, so it's called Other Side.
Other Side.
That's
nice.
the first time I've actually mentioned the cover or the title, but I
Ooh.
will. Yeah, it's very Stephen King-esque. I have like maybe 5,000 words till it's done. So
Okay, dang. Wait, 5,000?
yeah.
Oh, that's not a
I know,
lot.
I
Okay,
know.
yeah.
I'm like I'm basically at 60,000 right now. So.
Yeah. All the middle school kids watching this are like 5,000 words. That's insane. Like what?
No, seriously.
You mentioned like Stephen King. So like, what are some of your influences?
I am influenced by a lot of different things. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I wrote my first books before I was even writing, so I don't even know where that came from. It literally was just like, that sounds cool, and I just like wrote it down.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I read a lot of different books from a lot of different genres, and I also watch a lot of movies with my dad. I
Nice.
love watching like old movies with him. But like, ideas and inspiration are everywhere. Like for example, my boyfriend was Jared was playing Warframe the other day, and we watched like the introduction, and I was like, that's so cool. And now I'm on a sci-fi kick.
Oh
So
my.
it's like I'm just like obsessed with sci-fi. So it's like literally I'm influenced like very strongly by everything. But yeah, I recently got into horror. I've always been into like weird fiction, kind of creepy things. If you do want to read Forsaken and 50 Days, they're not necessarily horror, but it's definitely like Forsaken has telepathic cats and like zombie night creatures, and 50
Oh my.
Days is a girl trapped in a basement and this mysterious guy is taking care of her. Yeah, it's very very
Nice.
outlandish. And I've always written stuff like that, and I wasn't allowed to watch horror growing up, which I
Really?
mean makes
Oh.
sense. Most kids, you know,
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
But like,
some kids or whatever, and then
Most
there's
kids
me
can't.
all like mentally
Yeah.
scarred and
yeah,
everything.
but I never watched like horror growing up, and so I wasn't really influenced by it until I was older. And I read Frankenstein this January, just
Mary
was so long
Shelley.
ago. Yeah, Mary Shelley. I read Frankenstein, and I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then I read The Haunting of Hill House. I watched those shows with Jared. Like I watched The Haunting of Hill House.
That first season was
Haunting
dope,
of
dude.
Bly
I didn't
Manor.
watch this. I know. Well, it's not
Bly
second
Manor.
season per se, but it's like a that
Midnight
first season
Mass.
was dope. Midnight Mass. What's that?
It's his other series, and it is my favorite. It is so good. It's about, I don't want to spoil it, so I won't gonna say anything. But
It's the same creator. What's his name?
Of those shows, yes.
Yeah, those shows. Oh, I'm so frustrated.
And I feel bad we're talking about writing, and like, I forgot his name.
Oh, lordy. Okay, well.
But I really recommend Midnight Mass. It's a slow burn, but it's very good.
Nice.
Like, there's something about horror, and like, it feels weird to be like, oh yeah, I like to write horror, because that's kind of what I've been doing and like leaning into. But like, I didn't know this. I don't know if you knew this, but horror originated from teaching consequences for bad actions. So horror started as a warning genre. So like, it was actually like had to do with like religion, and they would use it as like, don't do this, don't play with the devil, because then he'll do this. It's like stuff like that, and it kind of emerged into this, and so it's kind of cool. I feel like horror has a lot of cool, like, does a lot with story that I really like. Like, I don't know, Frankenstein, the consequences of like playing God, and like, I don't know, like The Haunting of Hill House, like the consequences of messing with like the undead or something. I don't know, it's like.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that's like sort of the great thing about horror. I know you said like you were sort of like kept away from it growing up, but I don't know, in a way, maybe that also like, not, you know, because you were saying you got influenced by it later, but maybe in a way like not being able to have access to it sort of in your head. I'm sure you're always aware of like horror at least, and so maybe in your head you were sort of picturing like all these like things that are probably much worse than we would have seen. So as a result, you're, you know, once you like mature or whatever, you start writing all those things you probably envisioned or whatever, and thus we get 50 Days, was it? So like all the press like just coming out.
Yeah,
that's great.
No, but I like to classify my writing as weird fiction, like Jeff Vandermeer. So kind of it's a very broad genre, obviously, and you can do a lot with it. But weird fiction is Alice in Wonderland, for example. Carol, yes. Like, it's literally anything that's just like bizarre and not normal. It's not necessarily fantasy or sci-fi, but it's like just these weird, bewildering things are happening, and you, the reader, have to kind of piece it together. Nice.
Oh, cool. Well, this brings up a sort of good question, talking about like genre and like weird things.
Yeah.
Sort of a broader, like, you know, looking at it from audience perspective. Like, mentioned Stephen King. He writes weird stuff or whatever. People think he's weird. Like, do you think that's fair to do it at all? Like, do you think it's fair to read a work and assume that
the person
the thematic elements and like pertain to the author? Or do you think, as a writer yourself, it's like, no, it's a complete separation between me and my work?
So I believe that as soon as something is published, it no longer belongs to you. So I believe that, right, I think books are time capsules. I do think that you can learn a lot about someone by the works they've written. But I do think that they're time capsules. And so with both Forsaken and 50 Days, I wrote them during very different times in my life. Forsaken, it's kind of obvious, especially now to me, that I wrote it during a breakup. And like a really hard breakup, like first love, like kind of thing. And then 50 Days, I wrote when I was dating someone, and not a very good, like manipulative a little bit, and Ace, the main character, the mysterious guy, is kind of him, and you don't really realize that till after it's out. But I was using both of those books to sort through these deeper feelings, and so like I had a friend read 50 Days recently, and like, wow, you were going through something like shit, and I was like, I mean, I guess so, and like it is like a little uncomfortable, because like it is writing, like book writing is in a way diary writing, because like whatever you're going through in that time is going to influence the characters.
And I think that's great too, like you know, again, as a filmmaker or whatever, I know, you know, my peers, they look at their works from like years ago and they just like cringe so badly. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I cringe so bad.
Yeah, and like I totally get why, but at the same time it's like, you know, that's true to who you were, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, exactly, you know, you grow and you evolve, and like, you know, we think we're so like cool right now, but eventually we'll probably look back at this and be like, it's a little weird.
Yeah,
so,
I'm already cringing at like my sophomore year in college self. Like, oh god.
Yeah, man. And oh yeah, so quick thing about that. So it's you're a senior, right?
Yeah.
You're graduating. Yeah.
Next semester.
Yeah. Disclaimer. You know, like assuming nothing goes wrong, like boom.
Yes.
But well, congrats on that, man. It's gonna be great.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna be propelled into the real world now. I call myself a half adult because I'm an adult, but like, I'm not a full adult.
That sounds like a Disney movie. Half adult. It's like
I literally
adult torso with like baby legs and kind of like me.
Yeah, I guess it's like young adult, but it doesn't feel like I'm even a young adult. It's like, I don't know. You might not feel like this right now, but it's like I still feel like connected to like my high school life, but I'm like emerged out of it.
No, I felt like that for a bit, up until I think I turned like 22 or 23. it's crazy. I could like remember every single thing about high school, but then something happened. I guess I finally started living like my best life or whatever, and suddenly all of that vanished, and now like it's all blurred to me. Like I can't even imagine, or I can't believe that I was once in a place with like hallways and lockers. Like it just doesn't make sense to me.
It's
like
so weird.
Yeah, I finally feel like an adult. I got my tie,
That's
got my little SpongeBob socks or whatever. So
pure adult right there.
yeah, I'm as mature as they come.
Exactly.
You mentioned like time capsules. You also mentioned like Frankenstein. Like this isn't necessarily a question, just something I think is like fascinating. Like Little Women or something written like, you know, damn near like a century ago or whatever. Just, you know, you write something and it's set in stone and it's always going to exist. It's a part of you and it's always there. And
that's the cool thing about book writing is that like it's out there and like, you know, it might not get big or anything, but like you know that its existence is always going to be there. Like, like you're leaving something behind, I guess, which sounds kind of depressing, but it's like it's still kind of like, I don't know, like I think it'd be really fun and cool if like 200 years from now someone's like, oh, this book about this. Like,
like that's how I am with like, you know, watching movies from like the 50s, 60s or whatever. Like Vertigo is something that impacted me deeply when I saw it. It's like Hitchcock, when he's making it, he doesn't realize, you know, what, like 70 years from now, some dude named Aaron is going to watch this alone in his bedroom on Blu-ray. Like,
I think about that sometimes. Like, that's so weird. And like, I read Stephen King's autobiography on writing.
What was it called?
On writing. It's like half autobiography and then half writing tips. It was really, really great, and it was a really cool like peek into his life. But he did not think he was ever going to make it in writing. Like he literally was like in like a trailer making no money in writing, and he made it. And it's like to think that like I went to a bookstore yesterday and they had a shelf called Stephen King. I was like, imagine like writing these books in like your room late at night. Like I don't even know if I'm going to get there, and then you have a shelf dedicated to you. That's the ideal dream. And I guess going back to like Stephen King being weird, I think it's very obvious that Stephen King is a weird person, and he doesn't hold that back. He's very open about that, like in his autobiography and stuff. And I feel like I might be too a little bit, but I think it takes a lot of bravery to chase that weirdness and then make it a thing. But think about how many stories we wouldn't have if people didn't lean into their weirdness and uniqueness and stuff.
Do you have like friends or boyfriend, Jared, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have like people that sort of like can honestly critique your work, or you trust to like give their like actual opinion, and they won't just be like, yeah, it's good? It's
hard to find writers in real life, honestly. Like, it wasn't really till like Creative Writing Club.
Language building is right behind us.
I know, it was, you know, Creative Writing Club, I really found some people, including you, that I could kind of talk to about writing. I have some friends that write, but honestly, all my writer friends are online. Because I started like a platform, and I heard that like you need to market yourself with self-publishing, and so I made a platform, and I have a lot of online writer friends who are my age, and they're all self-published indie authors, or independent authors, and we all will like talk about our books together and stuff. But honestly, I don't know, with like especially with like my goals and stuff, I have always been kind of like a lone wolf. Like I just kind of I like the support, and I like talk about my writing with people, but like a lot of it has just been like me. So that's also kind of cool. Like it's like my thing. And
I think that's good for you to be able to like judge your work and like realize if something works, and like you know you're not just seeing with like sugar-coated glasses. Like I wrote this, therefore it's good. So I think that's sometimes like just as important.
Yeah, but no, critique is very important. I actually like hired someone to read. I hired most people to read 50 Days and give me like their honest opinions. Like I wanted people to destroy. There was like a few pieces in Hummingbird Tales that were fantasy, and I don't write a lot of fantasy, but I do like it. So I like sent like I have one friend who's like a fantasy writer, and I sent her like a bunch of stories, and I was like, I need you to rip this to shreds. Like I want you to tell me how that is. So she literally, it was like red, like completely red. Like, oh, this like motivation is weird, or this is like weird. This like line of dialogue, it's like sounds. I know. So. It's hard, but it's very helpful.
So like when you write, is there anything that sort of you just try to avoid, or like, okay, I'm not going to go that far, or like how is that?
That brings up a very interesting question when it comes to characters, because the book I'm writing right now, there is a character named Jackson, and he is vulgar, and he's like just like curses a lot, like very loud personality, but like he's not me. I mean, you could argue that he's like a version of myself, because like all characters are like manifestations of things in our heads.
Yeah.
But anyways, but yeah, so that was interesting, because like I like wanted to hold back from that. I'm like, oh, like I don't want people to like read me writing that, but it's like, but if a character is saying something, I think it's fine, because it's like the character that makes any sense. And also, like, I feel like it'd be a shame to like the characters to not explore their personality and like what makes them who, and like like who they are. And I did actually explore that through, and so like it came out that Jackson has a huge ego, and he's haunted, and he's like haunted by like insecurities and only child, and I explored all that stuff, and so he'll kind of mask his own stuff with like these like vulgar, mean comments.
Nice. So there's actually you're not just writing profanity just for the sake of profanity, which I can't stand. I mean, I was guilty of writing scripts. I didn't realize, because you know my day-to-day life, I do cuss a lot, unfortunately. But I realized my writing was like that, and to me it sounded natural. But then hearing other people say it, I was like, oh god.
I think it's dialogue. I think that's in dialogue. It's fine.
Yeah.
But also like, I don't know, but it's cool to have a balance, because not every character is going to curse and use profanity either.
When you write, do you have stronger, like, do you focus more on character or plot? Like, is there character?
Character.
Nice.
So I get an idea and I just go. So I'm a panster, right? There's like plotter, panster, planster, and I think we've talked about that. I think you're also panster a little bit.
I'm wearing shorts. That's so funny. Explain what that is.
So a panster is someone who just goes into a story blindly, or any creative project, and just goes. And so there's this quote I like that explores it very well. It's writing is like driving a car at night. You don't know where you're going, but you can see as far as your headlights show. And so it's like all you can see is like this little idea that's leading you. I love writing like this, and I feel like you can clearly tell when someone is plotting or pantsing. Fun fact, Stephen King is a pantster. He's not plotted one thing.
So you're saying pantster, right? Not planster?
Panster.
Panster.
Have a little bit of both. I sometimes will do that, but I feel like, me personally, I definitely can see how plotting would help a lot, and why, like, you know, like Lord of the Rings, like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Those are all plotted, like Games of Thrones, plotted high fantasy books.
And does plotted also include like world building, like sort of like coming up with like extensive backgrounds and whatnot?
And so like you world build, and you have like normally they have like a character sheet of like all the characters, like qualities and like favorite colors and clothes and stuff. And with pantsing, you figure everything out along the way. So I establish my characters. My main character in the book I'm writing is River. And then I established the secondary character, Ben, and then I established the four side characters. I held 3 fingers. And I'm a writer, not mathematician. So I kind of like loosely established those characters, and like I said, like I figured out Jackson along the way. I'm like, okay, this guy likes to cuss a lot. Why? Well, I just like to
and
cuss
that came like as you were writing.
As I was writing it, yeah. And so that's my favorite way to write, because I feel like the characters become very real, because I'm making the decisions for them, which also creates a really interesting thing. So I'm putting myself in their shoes, like, what would they do in this situation? But it's very character driven, and so I feel like, to me, the characters feel very real and very lively. They are not these like perfect Mary Sues, right? They're actual like having to figure out conflict, and also it's fun for me because I don't know how the book ends either. So it almost feels like I'm reading the book as I'm writing it, and I'm like figuring out what's going on as I'm coming up with the story.
Nice, that's
it's really,
good.
It's really fun.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned character qualities like sort of Mary Sue, which I don't know, maybe us mentioning that or whatever will get, pooped on or whatever. But I notice now with a lot of media, like film, television, like they're so hell bent on making the characters likable. And which I get, you want the audience rooting for, but at the same time, like sometimes, we ourselves aren't likable like day to day, and that makes the character compelling and whatnot. And so I really like that you brought that up.
I think we need to make characters real.
Yeah.
And I believe that we make characters real by, it sounds kind of weird, but figuring out what hurts them. So you need to find the character motivation, and the motivation is normally derived from their trauma. Everyone has their own trauma. Insecurities, anything like that. So like River, for example, in this book I'm working on has like anxious attachment style, and so like abandonment. So she like clings to like guys, And I explored that, and like, so I got that. So I got her insecurity, I got her motivation, which is to like become independent, like get away from that, and then I explored like her trauma throughout the book to create this like very real character.
Yeah.
She's not a likable character. She makes a lot of decisions that are very and like I don't know. She kind of annoys me a little bit, but she's real. At least I mean, I sound like Hi Mike is my own character I've created, but like I feel like this character, you know, is likable because people can probably relate to her, and so it's not necessarily making this like perfect character who's like super strong and super intelligent and like gorgeous or handsome. Like it's starting from the root and then building like a colorful circle around that.
Yeah, I really like that. And is there like a central trauma that you like recall that sort of not define you but really affected you and sort of like shaped kind of who you are today?
Yeah, and I think sadly we're never really going to perfectly heal from any of our trauma. We're just going to have to manage how to work with it. And in this, right, so might sound weird, but I also think it's kind of interesting because we all have our own problems and they're all going to affect us in different ways, and in turn they're going to make us into very unique people with different reactions, different stuff like that. And so I never realized, I'm never aware of trauma when I'm writing it. Like the breakup I was obviously writing about, and the toxic relationship I was obviously writing about. Like I didn't understand I was doing that until afterwards. And so even with Hummingbird Tales, I didn't realize I was exploring death. I didn't realize I was exploring stuff like that. And there is like trauma that has happened to me, but it hasn't been until recently that I've realized its effect on me. Right? Like growing up, it's like, oh, like, you know, like I was bullied or this person did this to me, like whatever.
Yeah.
But you get older and you realize like it's still rooted inside and you have to kind of work through that. So I think with everything I write, there is like a core trauma that I'm subconsciously working through. But like, I don't know, trauma's a hard thing to write about. That's why it's easier to write fiction and kind of hide behind a character. But I also think that writing is really healing. Did that kind of answer the question, Ryan?
No, yeah, totally. Because I mean, I know that's something I've realized in my writing, sort of like, I think, you know, my parents divorcing at a young age was something that like, even to this day, like it's crazy, you know, like it was 20 something years ago already, but I still like feel, because I've noticed like all of my characters have like this longing of sort of like what if, like what, you know, would this have happened, like something that, again, like you said, you don't even really realize until after. Like I'm like, oh, all these characters like have a longing for a world that is different than what they have in this sort of, you know, but thankfully I'm an optimist now, at least, so the stories usually end with them like, it's okay, like I'm forever gonna like want that, but at the same time I'm okay with what this is. So what generally do you think people take away from your writings, like your books? If they read a book, like what do you think? Do you think they're simply entertained? Do you think they're frightened by it, sad? Like what do you think they gain from like reading a Brittney Kristina novel?
So I've gotten that, it feels weird talking about this because I'm like, ooh, but I've heard that people don't know, like can't set my book down because it's just kind of this like constant
I've
journey.
heard that my books are so good that like they're just so damn.
No, like it's just like, it's not even that, it's just like they're like, I don't realize I do this, but I end every segment or chapter with a cliff because I'm a panster, and so it's like I kind of just will like end it for me and start back up, if that makes any sense. Like that's just my writing style. But I've figured out that through my writing style, like this character driven, like arising questions, like what's going on, like people are like it creates this like thriller type book. Like I didn't intend to write thrillers, but my books are known to be thriller, like sit down, gripping, like stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
But my main goal is really simple. I love when I read a book, right, I can't put it down, I get to the very end, I read the last line, and then I close the book and I just like stare at the cover for like a good 30 minutes, and I'm just like
smoking a cigarette, just like whew.
Yes, like I feel like I just ran a marathon and I'm just like, I don't know what to do next. And like you both want to like read a new book, but like and like keep reading, like the domino effect of reading, but you also like just want to sit with the book for a while. Yeah. Which is, I feel like it's probably a weird and high and mighty goal of mine, but like I have always wanted every single one of my books to have that effect on people.
I'm going to tell you how I approach my writing now. I'm going to see if you agree or disagree or if it's similar at all. Because before I used to just write, you know, little things or whatever. But like now that I'm maturing and I'm sort of, you know, trying to get my writing to like pertain to myself and the world around me, I kind of write with the intention that it needs to sort of have a meaning, like a point, like not just like a plot, but you know, I'm writing this to comment on this, like, so I'm essentially sort of, it's like my thesis or whatever, and you know, you can write an essay, it doesn't, you know, you don't have to agree or disagree with it, but it has to make sense within it, right?
Yeah.
Like, ideally some professor just, they're like, I disagree with this or whatever,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
No, I totally agree. Like, yeah, as you get older and mature, it's like, I think, yeah, the writing and the stories seem to have more like a meaning, you know, like intentional, you know, meaning. Like, not trying to like make it like a self-help book, like disguised in a fictional book or anything, but like, and also like, as I mentioned earlier, it reflects on what you're going through. And so that's something like identity is something I'm exploring. And so I'm exploring that with my writing and unintentionally creating this like meaning for the readers, so.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned readers now. Was that something is that something that you kind of that gives you a little anxiety? Because again, me, like some of the stuff I'm going to be doing, like, you know, movie scripts or whatever I've read, I'm like, damn man, I think this is going to be the one that people tear me apart for. Like, do you constantly go through that while you're writing, or is it sort of or are you just in your own world while you're writing, and then afterwards that's when you're like, I don't know if people are going to like this?
Yeah, so like...
Or not that they're going to like not like it, but they're going to be like offended or something like that.
Yeah. So sometimes when I write, I have like, I go back and forth of having like a really, really big ego. I'm like, this is the best writing ever. And then I'm also like, oh God, this is so crap. Like, this is so bad. Like, it just goes back and forth.
Struggles of a writer, man.
I guess one thing, right, imposter syndrome is a very real thing, but with mine is...
Define imposter syndrome, by the way.
Imposter syndrome is basically like, at least for me, it's like you feel like someone has already accomplished your goal and has done it better. And you feel like, right, like writing a book, like no matter what book you write, there's always gonna be something better, and like yours is always gonna suck, and I don't know, like you're never going to be up with the elites. Like I'm never gonna be like Stephen King, you know, so stuff like, so it's just like, it's like any creative project, any like job or something, you just don't, like, you feel like everyone there is cooler than you and stuff. It always kind of stems back from like our own insecurities and stuff. And so like for me, I've really tried to make my writing about me, which sounds bad, but like it's my own, like thinking about the readers and considering them, but like it's my own journey, right? This book is going to take up about a year of my life. Like I want this to be something fun for me. Yeah. And so just like using that and like exploring myself through it, creating this own fun journey for myself, you just have to kind of embrace your unique voice and trust that you're going to find your audience that way. Yeah. But I think if you tried to write if you tried to write for other people and tried to write in a way that people would like or agree with, then it's going to be, you know, it's just going to be like, I don't know, like there's gonna be no room for opinion. Like just everyone has their own unique train of thought and thought process and opinions, and it's like, I think it's really cool to lean into that. Yeah, definitely. And who do you think your audience is? Like I mean, again, having, you know, read a bit of Hummingbird tell, it just seems like anybody could pick it up really and like really enjoy it. But I like to think that my books are meant for anyone who wants a journey, wants something not necessarily like fast and easy to read, but I have heard that my writing can like serve as like a little boost, like I don't know, like going through a reading slump, looking for like a new adventure, looking for something unique and weird and something that you haven't ever read before. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Hopefully the audience feels a lot closer to you than before. I feel like recommending stuff to the audience now. Yeah, sure. All right, let's do it. Okay, my 6th top recommendation, 2 songs. I have Adriana by Monterio, which is like my favorite song of all time. And then I have Cry Baby by Kevin Morby. Those are just really good songs to put you in like a cool atmospheric vibe. And then if you want to get into creative nonfiction, I definitely recommend To Shake the Sleeping Self by Jediah. I will send you the right name. Jed Jenkins is his name. And it's his journey on bike from California all the way to South America.
And it's great. It's all nonfiction. It's wonderful. Then they have Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. That is my favorite book of all time. It is a really good book that explores like isolation and loneliness, and it is a sci-fi. And then we have On Writing by Stephen King. Great, phenomenal writing advice for any writer starting off or is a writer. And then Pomodoro Kitty. If you don't know what Pomodoro is, it's like this studying technique. It's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 4 times, and then we have a 15-minute break. And it's online, just pomodorokitty.com, and it's like a little cat, and it meows, and it's great, and it helps me with my writing sessions. So, yes, that's 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool.
All right, what's up, y'all? So the 6 things I want to recommend today, there will be 5 songs in one movie. So the first song I want to recommend is Ones Who Love You by Always. Always is quickly becoming one of my favorite bands, and the song Ones Who Love You is without a doubt my favorite song of theirs. The vocals by Molly, whose last name escapes me, are just absolutely spellbinding, and the song as a whole just really evokes some feelings of nostalgia and just love and longing, and I just think it's an absolutely beautiful song. Please check it out. The second one I want to recommend is Breakdown by Guns N' Roses. Now, Guns N' Roses are most famous for arguably like Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine. They're mostly seen as, a hard rock band, maybe even bordering on heavy metal, but Breakdown, I think, really cuts to the core of what the band truly is, which are just amazing songwriters, blues musicians, and just like beautiful melodic composers. And the third verse up into the outro and the last chorus are among the best things that I feel the band has ever done, and Axe's vocals on are absolutely amazing, and I think truly showcases talents as not just a great singer, but as truly one of the great artists of our time. The third song I want to recommend is Rooftop Dancing by Sylvan S. So an absolutely great, amazing song. Arguably the best thing to come out of 2020 was me discovering this song. Listen to it on 91.7 KXT, which I highly recommend checking out if you don't already know about that radio station. But Sylvan S's vocals in this and the sort of sparse production of it really give just a beautiful, almost lonely sort of feel to it. And I don't know, I'm not smart enough to like describe it in the amount of detail that it sort of warrants, but it's a great song, and please check it out. The fourth song I want to recommend is Lover's Rock by TV Girl. Shout out to my coworker Jackie for introducing me to this song. This song is absolutely groovy. You'll find upon listening to it, you'll find yourself just slowly bobbing your head and just sort of vibing and thinking of, and sort of like garnering feelings of wanting to like profess your love in a cool way to a fellow person you may or may not truly be in love, or perhaps you just might like lust after. Great song, please check it out. Fifth one I want to recommend is a band based out of Dallas, I believe, named Secrecies. Literally any song by them is worth recommending. They're a phenomenal band, but the one I really want to point out is Feel Safe. The first song I heard from them, the instrumentation is absolutely beautiful, and just the fact that they're within the vicinity.
Almost there.
Almost there, yeah. Just the fact that they're within the vicinity of where I live is absolutely breathtaking to me. They're such a great band, and I don't even just recommend, I implore you to check them out along with their works. Last thing I want to recommend, the sixth thing I want to recommend is a film, Baby Boy by John Singleton, who's most famous arguably for his 1991 debut film, Boys in the Hood. Baby Boy takes those topics but explores it a step further. It was made 10 years after, and it really showcases John Singleton's growth as a filmmaker. And yeah, please check it out. His depiction of immaturity to maturity to childhood to adulthood is just absolutely great. Tyrese Gibson gives an amazing performance as the lead character, Jody. And Snoop Dogg, of all people, gives a great performance as the antagonist. Rodney's great, and it really showcases, like, under the right hands, he's a really amazing character actor. Rest in peace to John Singleton, the first filmmaker I can remember looking up to. And yeah, please check out his film, Baby Boy. And those are my 6 recommendations. Hope you like them. They're not going to like them.
They're going to like them.
Alright, dude, so Hummingbird Tales, your 3rd published novel, correct? Alrighty, so looking at it, Where'd you get the title from? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so Elizabeth Gilbert, she had a speech, forgot the name of it, but I know it's referenced in the book, about the two types of creatives. So we have the jackhammer, which has like, they have one goal that they head toward, right? They go to like school, get their PhD, like doctors, for example, they work toward like their one destination, and they stay on that one path. Hummingbirds, however, are like a zigzag, so they go from one idea to the next to the next, and so like they normally have like multiple different jobs, or like they just like don't want to stay in one position. And I always considered myself like a jackhammer, right? Like with a like as writing, like as a writer, like staying with one goal and working toward like just being this novelist. But like as I grew up, there was like so many stories I wanted to write about, so many things I wanted to do, but I felt like boxed into this like idea of being a writer. And so when I heard that speech, it really helped me. And so Hummingbird Tales is the tales of a hummingbird.
Nice.
Otherwise, like just all the different versions and interests that I have, and just allowing myself to explore them without boxing myself in.
Okay, nice. That's great. And I noticed like during the introduction, you kind of like elaborate on that further, right? You talked about it's really great. And
Cool,
okay, and just looking at this like awesome cover, do you want to tell me about it, how it like came to be?
Yeah, so it actually started from a Canva cover that I saw, and I was like, ooh, that's like Canva, like the graphic design website. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's a cool design. I could even like send you what that would look like, and you can like have it or something. But I made this like a little design on Canva, and my boyfriend Jared is a graphic designer, and so I'm like, oh, like you could like illustrate it, right, to make it a little less like Canva and more personal. And so he sketched out this hummingbird, he sketched out the cover, added like his own personal twist to it. When we downloaded the cover, the hummingbird had this glitch on it. And we were like, oh man, like he worked so long on it and so hard, he had to redo like a whole hummingbird.
Dang.
But then we were like looking at it and we were like, wait just a second. This looks really cool. We like this. Because the whole book is about identity and like finding yourself and like emerging out of like this shell. And like it literally looks like, maybe it's just me, but like to me and Jared, it looked like this hummingbird. It was like the different like versions that were like, it was like, it's a glitch, like it's glitching.
Yeah.
I don't know. And like revealing all these colors and parts of itself, and it kind of looks like it's like emerging out. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we decided to keep it, and
you know,
and also because the book explored like imperfections, I think, and so it kind of, I don't know.
No, okay, I really dig that, and I noticed you sort of open the novel with a quote by Franz Kafka. Is that how you say it? Franz Kafka. Cool. Well,
He's an author.
Nice. How did you come about like discovering that quote? I think it's a really lovely one, by the way. It's really great.
Thank you. I always like to have a quote in the beginning of my book that kind of explores the book. I don't know if I have it one in Forsaken, but yeah, I do.
Nice.
Right, I have one here, and I know I have one in 50 days, and so just came across it, and I just was like, I feel like quotes in the beginning of books serve as a good example of what you're getting into.
Yeah. Let's see. Don't bend, don't water it down, don't try to make it logical, don't edit your sew according to the fashion. Rather, follow your most intense obsessions mercilessly.
Yeah.
Mercilessly.
Yes,
That's good enough, yeah.
I thought that was a great, like, example of like what I was trying to do. Like leaning into yourself. Don't like change yourself depending on what you think is right or what you think you should be doing. Like, don't limit yourself. Just lean into what excites you and what fascinates you.
Yeah. And then going sort of further into the book, so I noticed like you have like sort of divide into, because I mean the whole book like essentially where I just kind of like a bunch of short stories, short hummingbird tales, if you will,
like flash
or
fiction.
Short stories and creative nonfiction.
Yeah.
So what's the significance of like part 1, part 2, and part 3, and dividing it and titling those? So respectively, part 1 backward straight down, part 2 simply at rest, part 3 forward straight up. What made you come up with that? That sort of like framework of like dividing it into 3 sections, and what are the significance of the titles pertaining to each section?
Yeah, so hummingbirds have a very unique wing structure, and so they can fly backwards straight down, and they can fly simply at rest in motion, or they can go forwards and straight up. Ooh. So they are like the only birds, I believe, that can go like all these different directions.
Really?
They can't. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now that you mention it, that's pretty unique.
And so I know I wanted to separate it in parts because I definitely felt like there were some stories that were darker,
denser, and there were other stories that were lighter, more playful, and there was other stories that just kind of were there. And so that's how I decided to like name them. I found out that fact about hummingbirds, and I was like, that's a great way. So backwards, straight down, that's where I kind of explore like death and the afterlife and hard things like that, like, you know, trauma, and just like the harder topics. You know, they're not necessarily sad stories, but it's definitely, you know, like me exploring these darker themes. And then Set Day at Rest is more of like a standstill, right? We have like stories that, right, like not necessarily like difficult topics to write about, but not necessarily happy either, just kind of stand still, right? We have like some character growth, we have some like romance, we have, you know, we have like a sleep paralysis. You're Not Real is about my sleep paralysis. And
then of course it wasn't me
wasn't me.
Based off of the famous Shaggy song. But cool. And then part 3.
Yeah, Forward Straight Up, that's about my growth. All those pieces kind of explore growth, and they all end happily. So
good. So going off of like part 1, just again kind of reading, you know, How to Write a Book in 4 Easy Steps, which
did you read that one?
Yeah, I read it. I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna get some writing advice, and then I forget what the steps are. You know, it starts pretty normal, right? So 1, return to your past to seek out your idea. All right, makes sense, you know, sort of rediscover yourself, you know, and then you keep reading.
Yes.
And then suddenly blood gets involved, a lot of it. You start polishing it, and then before you know it, you've bled yourself away, which metaphor, you know, I think that's a good metaphor because you are sort of doing that. You're pouring yourself out there. So, you know, that sort of takes on a sort of, maybe it was just me. I sort of found like a dark sort of humor about it. But then immediately goes to sleepwalking, completely different tone, like awesome or whatever. Like, is that sort of like a good example of your writing? Like you enjoy taking like different sort of like, you know, like dark humor, but with like really introspective, like dramatic things. Like, do you sort of enjoy blending those?
Yeah, and that was the one thing. That's another reason why I named this book Hummingbird Tales, is because I could not figure out a title. I could not figure out a way that all these stories interconnected because they were all so different. And I was like, me, one writer, how did I write all these like different stories, like dark humor and then typical horror and then like romance? Like I didn't know what to name it. So it took that like, oh yeah, because I'm a hummingbird and I like a bunch of different things in a bunch of different genres that I was able to name it that. But yeah, I get an idea and I just chase it, and they always take me in different directions and not one is the same. And yeah, and so putting these stories together was also hard, but there is an order. They're all in the order that they should be in. So
nice. And with that order, like, did it, before it got to this final order, that you have to play around, like this story's
For
gonna
sure,
be maybe
yes.
be here, and how hard was that?
It was difficult. My thing was breaks. I would give the reader, I try to give the reader a break and like a breath. So
That's good.
I think that How to Write a Book in 4 Easy Steps was a good way to open this book, just because
it's definitely like, okay, like strap on, boys, like this is gonna get real.
Yes, and the amount of times I get asked that, like, how do you write a book? And right, it's easy to just give simple steps, right? Like, get your idea, get your characters, stuff like that. But writing a book is a very treacherous journey, and it's very hard on your mind and soul. And so yeah, I was kind of like sarcastically like, oh, you want to know how to write a book? Like, I'll tell you.
Do you really want to know how to write a book?
Yeah, and
you don't want to know.
Obviously, you're not going to bleed yourself to death, but sometimes that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no.
Like at the end of a long writing session, you're like, oh God, like.
How long did it take you to write this? I know it was like a collection of tales or whatever that presumably you decided to put, but how long was the conception, and what is your average like book length or
It takes
whatever?
about a year to write a book. I did do NaNoWriMo, which was 50,000 words in a month, so that's probably going to take me like.
And you survived.
And I want to finish the first draft by the end of December, ideally. So that's like 2 months. But then I'm going to edit and rewrite. But these stories, a lot of them happen in college, but most of them happen in college. Recently, especially when I discovered what creative nonfiction was, and I was fascinated.
What made you? What kickstarted that? Your discovery?
I took a class. I was either between poetry or creative nonfiction, and I was like, I don't really like poetry that much. Sorry, poetry people.
Dang.
Yeah, I do like it, but it's just not what calls to me right now. And
Totally,
I also, oh, sorry, like move the whole table, but
No,
I like to blog and I work for a magazine. So I like, oh, creative nonfiction. That might be helpful, beneficial for me, like in the future. So I took it without realizing what I was getting into, which creative nonfiction is essay writing, but it's personal. And so like You're Not Real is like a sleep paralysis story, and it's a braided essay between like what is real and what is not, and like sleep paralysis, right? It feels very real. Like it's like normally like I had like a sleep paralysis demon. It really I explored it a lot further in the story, but and then I dated a guy who I thought like we were like madly in love, and we weren't. And so it's kind of playing with that idea of like what we like will like we convince ourselves that things are real when they're not. So and that's what creative nonfiction is. So it's like taking your own personal stories and then like turning
it up to 11 or whatever.
Yes. So
nice. And you kind of mentioning that like and again you write this I believe in the introduction, and you reference it again in the afterword about how like it is kind of yourself, you're taking like things from your life and whatnot, and sort of building off of them. And I think swimming is a really good example of that. Like personally, again, as a swimmer, like reading that was really like just
did you relate to it?
Yeah, I related to it substantially. Like
it's a great way to think.
6:30 a.m. practices going, just sort of swimming, and you have this like this association where you're just like going through the motions, and you're sort of thinking of all this, and you're writing itself is like so great and like crisp. And again, it just,
I appreciate
if I didn't know you, I would have like picked this book up and read it. I was like, oh, this is clearly like an acclaimed author or whatever. It's just like so great. And so kind of going off of that, like, do you ever get an idea like just like, okay, I'm going to do a story about this, or is it usually like from your like 99% of the time just like from your own being? Like, do you ever just conceive something out of the blue, like I'm going to write about this pot and these headphones, like, and if so, like, do you have a preference between the two? Do you find like a dip in quality of your work, like if you go between either?
Yeah, so I almost like did that with my pieces. I almost wrote like after each piece like a small paragraph about why I wrote the piece, but I was like, no, interpretation, I think.
Yeah.
Good. But swimming, you're gonna hate me. I wrote it in 30 minutes.
30 minutes?
After swim practice.
Dang.
Because it was this quote that I actually heard from an author, and Harlan, her last name was Harlan, for your first name. She said, chase the heat. Chase what hurts. And I was angry. In that piece, I explored that like friend group that like didn't invite me to their birthday party, and like it was like I was thinking, like while I was swimming, I was thinking about it, and I was still like I felt better, but it still hadn't let go, and I just was like angry and I don't know, like hurt, and so I sat down and I wrote this piece, and I wrote about the experience of me swimming and in like parallel exploring that hurt. And I literally just almost read it, like a lot of like these creative nonfiction pieces almost felt like diary entries, but the way I wrote them was like a fiction piece. So it was very interesting for me to go back to. But yeah, so I just sat down and I don't know, like I didn't even know where it came from. It just was like this heat inside me, and I just had to get it out.
You have to chase it, and just reading that, it is kind of cool, like, it's so vivid, like, talking about her, doing like freestyle and just like little things. 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe. I'm like, oh, that was my breathing pattern too. I would always breathe on a 2 and 4.
Yeah,
so 1,
me too,
2, breathe.
which is
1, 2, 3, 4,
wrong,
breathe. But
whatever.
It's really great. But then, as you noted, like as the story progresses, you realize it's not really exactly about swimming or whatever. It's about like that sort of, just being in your own little world, like literally like underneath it all or whatever, like what's truly going on at its core. And so lovely chapter. I absolutely love that. And then in part 3 you have the girl with the book, which is sort of an like contrast to swimming. It's completely different POV or whatever. Presumably it's not you, but maybe it's about you, or like how you potentially see yourself. And where did that come from?
Yeah, that was actually something in Creative Writing Club. I think it was an icebreaker. It was write a story about yourself and a point of view of someone else, and you're find a different character talking about you. And like I don't know, like commenting on you. So that's me. The girl with the book is me, and I wrote in the perspective of this guy who saw me from the outside and what that would look like. So that is my, almost like, you know, like painters, they paint the self-portrait.
Yeah.
Self-portrait, basically.
Nice. It's really great. And, you know, so it's, like you said, it's someone seeing you from the outside. And how do you see yourself? Is that an accurate or is that just simply like a character looking at this person?
Yeah.
Like, how do you view yourself? Like,
Kind of ditzy, a little airheaded. Like honestly,
you're
which is
describing
probably
me at this point.
probably not the nicest, but like I feel like my personality doesn't fit with my writing, which I feel like people meet me and then they read my writing and they're like, what?
Yeah.
But like, so I guess like that, like just this like to herself, maybe not very like confident, not very sure how to hold herself.
And do you think that's sort of like, you know, like not being confident in yourself? Do you think if you were to suddenly be confident in yourself, like your writing would be affected? Like, do you, or like?
I don't think so, because I explore that a little bit in like versions of myself and a few other pieces, but when I write, I feel like the most myself.
Yeah, that's good.
Then when I'm in public and
yeah, and then actually it kind of goes back to what we said earlier, you know, it's a time capsule, so even if like it does change or whatever, at this point you were a certain way and you may be different, but that's still like true to who you were, and that's always great.
The colors of me, of you, of us, I don't remember how I got this, but it was like, I'm really into emotions, right? With my psychology background, I love to explore emotions, and I was kind of like, like I wonder, like what would happen if you paired emotions with colors? And I just sat down at my desk one day at work. Oops, sorry. I was at work, and I literally just like started writing.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I just like it's a rainbow of emotions, and so it's like what red feels like, what orange feels like, what yellow feels like, what all the way through. And my favorite is purple. It's the saddest, but yeah. And I had a friend read it, and he mentioned, I remember like at first it was like individual sections. He's like, why do you blend them together like a rainbow? He's like, rainbows aren't like just blocks of color, they're blended. So if you look at it closely, that was actually not very easy to do, but I blended it.
Yeah.
So if you read, like it carries into it. So that's one of my favorite ways to do format. As I said, like I love weird formats. So
yeah.
Like I guess like for like until I am home in bed. So that's like a cut from those sections, and then like orange popsicles on a summer day, sipping homemade Moscow mules, your hand clammy mine, and we're laughing about something you said, a different summer day.
Yeah.
So it kind of like jumped, I don't know. So that was really fun to do.
That's really great. That's really unique. Like granted, like I don't read a lot, so maybe you know, all these like, you know, people who do read are like, oh well, you know, so and so did it, you know, back in the 17th century, maybe, but to me like that's like so unique, like something I've never even seen before. And some things like I didn't think were like possible, because me, I just like read novels like, oh, beginning, middle, and end, but like you're really like exploring with like the actual technique of writing and like what you can get away with and what you can do, like the possibilities of just like authorship, and that's really great.
I like to say that writing is like painting an abstract work.
Yeah, nice. And speaking of, you said you struggle with titles, but that's like an amazing title right there. All of these are.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're like, I appreciate that, even if I don't necessarily believe you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Now, I want to talk about the afterword. This paragraph that I really want to highlight, because when I read it, it affected me in a way, even though, you know, I'm not a girl that I once was, but here, I'll just read it. First, let's raise our glasses in an imaginary cheers to the girl I once was, the person all of us once were, and the people we are now, and the people we will be in time. Let's cheers to this wonderful little life art of our known. That's really beautiful, dude. That was really great. And do you often... Yeah, you're welcome. And how do you feel about like your past selves? Do you constantly sort of like think back to like, you know, how you were like a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago? Like,
like a lot of reflection. I think our past like stays with us a lot, and you know does affect us. Like, I don't know, like I'll go through like little like trips down memory lane while I'll think about things. And as we like mentioned earlier, like certain things from our past do affect us into adulthood. But yeah, I think it's really easy to get caught up in the past and like what we would have, could have, should have done, and like, you know, because it's like that high school life is over. College for me is almost over, and it's like, whoa, like did I? Like,
and we just met, bro. It's already gonna.
I know, and I'm going through a little limbo where it's like, did I do it right? Like, did I do it like in the correct way? And I think the best thing to do is like just let go and keep letting life happen for us. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I really
So,
enjoy that. It's really
yeah.
great. And I mean, no matter what, you know, if you did or didn't do something right at the end of the day, you brought this into the world. I think that's amazing along with these two. So something worked out.
Yeah.
All right, dude. So Hummingbird tells, like, no matter what happened in your life, just please keep writing or whatever, because you clearly are very talented in it, and I always believe the stars are aligned in a certain way, and however they manage to align themselves brought you to do this, and it would be an astronomical failure. It would be a disservice to the entire world and the public and all the people who live, you know, among the world if we weren't able to like read your writing. So please continue to do that. Amazing or whatever, and I'm just.
That
You
is
know,
the sweetest thing ever.
I can only like speak for myself or whatever, but it like just like getting to know you and having a chance to like talk with you, for me at least, it feels like whatever I did with my life, I did it the right way because I was able to come across you. So great stuff.
Well, thank you so much for saying that.
Of course, you're like, I wish I could say the
That's
same, and then you
so-
like flip the table over.
I know. But no, you're very talented as well. You are a great writer.
Thank you. I'm gonna cut all this stuff up. I'm a humble king. But all right, great.